The biting March wind whipped around the women, a stark reminder of their captivity in a foreign land. For months, their minds had been fed a steady diet of propaganda. Britain, a nation brought to its knees, its people starving, its spirit broken by the relentless U-boat blockade. They had pictured a desolate landscape, gaunt faces and empty shelves. But as the lorry rumbled to a halt and the guards gestured them towards the bustling thoroughfare, a collective gasp escaped their lips. Before them lay not the ruins of a dying empire, but a vibrant, teeming open-air market, a spectacle of life that would shatter every lie they had ever been told. It was early 1944, and the war, though far from over, had begun to turn its inexorable tide. For the German women interned at Camp 34, a converted country estate near Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk, the reality of their situation was a daily grind of monotony and uncertainty. These were not frontline combatants, but a diverse group: auxiliary personnel captured during the North African campaign, nurses from occupied territories, and even civilians caught in the Channel Islands when the tide of war shifted. Among them were Helga, a pragmatic former auxiliary nurse in her late 20s, whose sharp eyes missed little; Greta, barely 20, still clinging to the fervent idealism instilled by the Hitler Youth; and Ilse, a weary woman in her 40s, a civilian from Guernsey whose quiet cynicism had been honed by years of hardship. Their journey to Britain had been a blur of fear and disorientation, culminating in the stark, albeit humane, confines of the internment camp. Yet even within the barbed wire perimeter, the echoes of Nazi propaganda resonated. Daily, they discussed the news, filtered through official German radio broadcasts they occasionally overheard, or through the heavily censored letters that sometimes arrived. The narrative was consistent, unwavering. Britain was on the brink of collapse. The U-boat wolf packs, they were told, had strangled the island nation, cutting off vital supplies. Famine was rampant, the populace demoralized, their spirit broken. Helga, ever the realist, had harbored doubts, but Greta clung fiercely to the vision of a starving enemy, a testament to Germany's might. Ilse, having witnessed the grim realities of occupation, found it easier to believe in widespread suffering, though she suspected the full truth was more complex. Their physical state reflected the war's toll. Though adequately fed by British standards, the rations were a far cry from the pre-war abundance they remembered. Their clothes, often hand-me-downs or mended camp issue, spoke of scarcity. Psychologically, they were a complex mix: weariness from prolonged conflict, a deep-seated longing for home, but also a stubborn pride and a lingering belief in their nation's ultimate victory. The British Guards, though firm, were generally fair, a fact that subtly chipped away at the caricature of the brutal enemy they had been fed. One crisp Tuesday morning, an unexpected announcement rippled through the camp. A small, supervised group of women was to be taken into the nearby market town. The official reason was vague: to assist with local agricultural efforts, but the underlying purpose, they suspected, was a combination of resourcefulness on the part of the camp commandant to acquire specific goods, and perhaps a subtle, almost imperceptible attempt at rehabilitation or exposure to British civilian life. Helga, Greta and Ilse were among those selected. A mixture of apprehension and a strange, almost forbidden curiosity stirred within them. What would they see? Would it be the desolate landscape of their propaganda, or something else entirely? As the old military lorry rumbled along the winding country lanes, the women huddled together, their expectations a volatile cocktail of dread and a faint, unacknowledged hope. They braced themselves for the sight of a nation in despair, ready to confirm every dark rumor. The journey was short, the anticipation long, and the impending revelation would prove to be nothing short of seismic. The lorry coughed to a halt, its engines sputtering before falling silent. The sudden cessation of noise amplified the unfamiliar symphony that now enveloped them, a cacophony of human voices, the clatter of wooden crates, the distant bleating of sheep, and an underlying hum of purposeful activity. As the canvas flap was pulled back, revealing the bustling market square, the women were hit by a sensory onslaught that defied every expectation. It was not the grey, desolate scene of their indoctrinated imaginings, but a riot of colour and sound, a vibrant tableau of life stubbornly persisting amidst the shadow of war. The air, though cool, was thick with the mingled scents of freshly turned earth, ripe apples, baking bread from a nearby stall, and the briny tang of fish. Stalls laden with produce stretched as far as the eye could see. Piles of carrots, their orange hues startlingly bright, sat beside mounds of earthy potatoes. Cabbages, their leaves a deep, verdant green, were stacked high, alongside baskets overflowing with rosy-cheeked apples and pears. Even though rationing was in full effect, the sheer volume and variety of what was available was staggering to their eyes, accustomed to the scarcity of wartime Germany. British civilians, bundled in practical coats and scarves, moved with an unhurried efficiency, their voices a low murmur of polite conversation. There were queues, certainly, but they were orderly, punctuated by good-natured banter and the occasional dry witticism that seemed to be a national characteristic. Children, rosy-cheeked and bundled against the chill, darted between legs, their laughter echoing through the square. Women, their hair neatly pinned, carried wicker baskets, their faces etched with the quiet determination that had become the hallmark of British resilience. Their clothes, though often mended and clearly not new, were clean and well-maintained, a testament to the make-do-and-mend spirit that permeated every aspect of life. Greta, her mouth slightly agape, felt a hot flush of confusion spread across her face. This wasn't right. This wasn't the starving, demoralized enemy she had been taught to despise. Helga's pragmatic mind struggled to reconcile the vivid reality before her with the stark images of famine and despair that had been so carefully cultivated in her mind. Ilse, the cynic, felt a cold knot of anger begin to form in her stomach. Anger not at the British, but at the systematic deception she was now witnessing unravel. They watched as a woman carefully handed over her ration book to a butcher, receiving a small but respectable joint of meat. Another exchanged coupons for a loaf of bread, still warm from the oven. The system, far from being a sign of collapse, appeared to be working with remarkable efficiency and fairness, ensuring that everyone received their share. This was a stark contrast to the burgeoning black markets and the desperate scramble for food that had become commonplace in many parts of Germany, where privilege often dictated access to necessities. Memories of ersatz coffee, synthetic fabrics, and the constant gnawing hunger that had become a familiar companion in their homeland flooded their minds. Here, amidst the bustling market, there was a palpable sense of community, a shared understanding of hardship, yes, but also an unyielding spirit of defiance. The British people, far from being broken, seemed to have simply adapted, finding strength in unity and resourcefulness. The market was not just a place of commerce, it was a living, breathing testament to a nation that refused to yield, a stark, undeniable refutation of every lie they had been fed. The shock was profound, the disbelief almost physical, and the dawning realization of the extent of their deception began to settle like a heavy shroud over their once firm convictions. The journey back to Camp 34 was conducted in an uncharacteristic silence. The usual chatter and complaints were replaced by a heavy, almost palpable quiet, punctuated only by the rumble of the lorry's engine. Each woman was lost in her own internal maelstrom, grappling with the seismic shift in their understanding of the world. The vibrant market, with its undeniable proof of British resilience and resourcefulness, had shattered the carefully constructed edifice of Nazi propaganda. Greta, the youngest and most fervent believer, felt a profound sense of betrayal. Her face, usually alight with youthful conviction, was now pale and drawn. It can't be real," she whispered to Helga, her voice barely audible. "They must have staged it for us. A trick." Helga, however, shook her head slowly. No, Greta. The smells, the sounds, the way people moved, it was too real, too ordinary. Ilse, observing them both, felt a grim satisfaction mingle with her anger. They lied to us, all of it. Every word about Britain starving, about their people being weak. Her voice was low, laced with a bitterness that spoke of years of suppressed doubt, finally finding an outlet. Over the next few days, the market visit became the sole topic of hushed, intense conversation among the prisoners. Initial reactions varied wildly. Some, like Greta, clung desperately to the idea of a British deception, a cunning ploy to demoralize them. Others, particularly those who had seen more of the world before their capture, found their own suppressed doubts confirmed. Arguments flared, voices rose in frustration as the women wrestled with the cognitive dissonance. How could everything they had been taught, everything they had believed, be so utterly false? The implications were terrifying, shaking the very foundations of their worldview. If this was a lie, what else was? Their interactions with the British Guards, previously viewed through a lens of enemy suspicion, now took on a new dimension. The Guards, though maintaining their professional distance, were not the caricatures of brutality depicted in German propaganda. They were men, some young, some older, with families and concerns, often sharing a quiet joke amongst themselves. One afternoon, a guard, a kindly older man named Sergeant Davies, offered Helga a small piece of chocolate, a rare treat even for the British. Helga, initially wary, accepted it, and the simple act of human kindness, devoid of malice or condescension, chipped away further at the wall of animosity. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes about a humanity that transcended the brutal divisions of war. The contrast between the British rationing system and the Nazi narrative became a focal point of their internal debates. The market had shown them a system of equitable distribution, where everyone, regardless of social standing, received their allocated share. This was a stark counterpoint to the growing disparities within Germany, where party officials and the privileged often had access to goods denied to the common citizen, and where the black market thrived on desperation. The British system, born of necessity and a sense of collective responsibility, fostered a quiet strength, a shared sacrifice that bound the community together. Nazi propaganda, conversely, had sought to divide and conquer, both internally and externally, by painting a picture of enemy weakness and internal German strength built on false premises. Slowly, painfully, the women began to process the systematic deception. It wasn't just about food. It was about the very nature of the war, the character of their enemy, and the integrity of their own leadership. The market had been more than just a glimpse of British life. It had been a window into a truth that had been deliberately obscured, a truth that now demanded a complete re-evaluation of everything they thought they knew. The anger at their captors began to morph into a deeper, more unsettling anger at those who had fed them such elaborate, destructive lies. The market visit, a mere few hours in their long internment, cast an indelible shadow over the remaining months of their captivity and profoundly shaped their post-war lives. For Helga, Greta, and Ilse, the revelation was a catalyst for a profound re-evaluation of their beliefs, a painful but ultimately liberating journey from indoctrinated certainty to a nuanced understanding of truth. Helga, the pragmatic nurse, found herself increasingly questioning the official narratives of her homeland. Her initial anger at the deception matured into a quiet determination to seek out verifiable facts, to scrutinize every claim. After repatriation in 1946, she returned to a Germany in ruins, a stark contrast to the resilient Britain she had witnessed. She pursued a career in nursing, dedicating herself to healing, both physical and societal. The memory of the British market, a symbol of quiet strength and communal effort, became a benchmark against which she measured the rhetoric of post-war reconstruction, always wary of grand pronouncements and eager for tangible, honest progress. Greta's transformation was perhaps the most dramatic. The initial shock and betrayal slowly gave way to a deep, disillusionment with the ideology she had so fervently embraced. The vibrant market, a living refutation of Nazi lies, had shattered her youthful idealism. She spent her internment in a state of quiet introspection, often seeking out conversations with the British Guards, not to argue, but to understand. Upon her return to Germany, she struggled to reconcile her past beliefs with the devastating reality of defeat and the atrocities that came to light. She became a vocal advocate for education and critical thinking, determined that future generations would not fall prey to such systematic deception. The market had taught her the brutal cost of blind faith. Ilse, the cynical civilian, found a measure of vindication in the market's truth. Her long-held suspicions about the regime's honesty were confirmed, but the confirmation brought little joy, only a deeper sorrow for the millions who had suffered under its lies. She returned to a devastated Guernsey, rebuilding her life with a quiet stoicism. The memory of the British market, with its orderly queues and shared sacrifice, became a symbol of how a nation could endure hardship with dignity and fairness, a stark contrast to the brutal opportunism she had witnessed under occupation. She carried with her a profound appreciation for genuine community and the quiet strength of ordinary people. The historical significance of such civilian encounters cannot be overstated. The resilience of the British populace, their ability to maintain morale and an effective, equitable distribution of resources despite relentless bombing and the U-boat threat, was a crucial, often overlooked element of the Allied war effort. The open-air markets, far from being symbols of deprivation, were vibrant hubs of community, demonstrating a nation's unyielding spirit and its capacity for collective endurance. They were a powerful, living refutation of enemy propaganda, a testament to the fact that a nation's strength lay not just in its military might, but in the unwavering spirit and resourcefulness of its people. The experience of these German POW women serves as a potent reminder of the enduring power of truth, even when buried under layers of systematic falsehood. The market, with its simple abundance and bustling life, exposed the fragility of narratives built on lies. It underscored that propaganda, however pervasive, ultimately crumbles when confronted with the undeniable reality of human resilience and the quiet, persistent truth of everyday life. It was a lesson learned not through battle, but through the simple, profound act of seeing. If you found this historical account compelling, do consider subscribing to our channel for more untold stories from the annals of history. Your support helps us bring these vital narratives to light. Like, share and comment below to join the conversation.